Good evening. I'm Sherry Stevens, the Director of UAlbany's Community and Public Service Program. And this is Diane Reiner, founder of Jajjas Kids. I'd like to welcome you to the Great Danes Connect, the Alumni Association series of virtual programming that keeps the UAlbany community connected. Through live talks delivered online by expert alumni and faculty, virtual networking events, and more, we aim to provide you, Great Danes and guests, with opportunities to have fun, stay engaged, and build networks regardless of your location. Please know that this event is being recorded, and if you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature on Zoom, which you'll find at the bottom center of your screen, or if you prefer, you can use the chat feature as well. So sit back and enjoy tonight's conversation on the ripple effect, making a difference for African children, featuring Diane Reiner from the class of 1968. Originally from Long Island, Diane settled in the Capital District after completing her bachelor's degree at SUNY Albany. She states that, coming from flat Long Island, I saw the Helderbergs, thought they were mountains, and decided to stay. Diane majored in English with a minor in art, took a photography class with Joe Alper, famous for his photographs of jazz and folk musicians during the Civil Rights Movement. Joe had just established the photography department at SUNY, and it was Diane's first exposure to the magic of the darkroom. She was hooked. And from there, photography became a lifelong passion. Diane spent most of her career as a manager for New York State, first at the education department and then environmental conservation. During that time, she continued to pursue photography, frequently attending the main photographic workshops and doing freelance work. She retired from state service in 2002 with a strong desire to travel and work internationally. That desire became a reality following a trip to Uganda in 2006, to study photography for humanitarian organizations. 2 years later, Diane began Jajjas Kids. This is a great segue to Diane's second passion, humanitarian work. So let us have Diane tell us about Jajjas Kids, the nonprofit organization that she established in the slums of Kampala, Uganda.
Well, thank you very much, Sherry, for that nice introduction and for your time tonight. And I want to thank the staff of the Alumni Association for putting this program together. You've all been terrific and I appreciate it. And I'm happy to share my story about Jajjas Kids. If any of the people on this webinar have seen the slides that were shown just before we started the talk, those are pictures that I took in my first trip to Uganda. And as was alluded to, I went there to do a photography workshop. So I'd always been interested in Africa. I just had a lifelong interest in it. And after my mom passed away and I had a little bit of inheritance, I thought this was a good opportunity to utilize her gift to me and put it to some very purposeful use. So I found a photography workshop in Uganda. The theme of it was working for world relief organizations, and I needed a project. I needed a group to photograph as part of my 2-week study. And I learned about a group of kids that were performers, musicians and dancers, and they were originally from the slums of Kampala. So my purpose in my project was to photograph kids in the slums to identify and document where these kids might have come from originally. To do that, I needed to go in with some guidance. I couldn't, as a white woman with big, expensive cameras, walk into the slums by myself. So I was introduced to a young man who was 20 at the time. His name is Reiner, and he was my guide for a couple of days going into the slums. Ronnie had been on the streets himself as a child, starting at the age of 6. And for 10 years, he lived on the streets with other children. No parents, no guidance of any kind, no education, no medical care, no shelter at night, no steady supply of food. Ronnie had that lifestyle for 10 years. And when I met him, he was off the streets for 4 years. At that point, he had been taken in at the age of 16 by an organization that tried to rehabilitate kids. And so he had shelter, he had food. He didn't get any formal education there either, but he got good counseling. But after 3 years there, he was ready to start his life. So when I met him a year after he was out of that program, he was obviously, barely surviving monetarily. He took me around the slums and he introduced me to kids very carefully that were just hanging out on the streets in the different pockets of the city. Kampala is the capital of the country. And so he was, checking out these kids, looking out for them, One kid had an open wound that wouldn't heal, and we went and got him some medication. Other kids needed some guidance. And I watched Ronnie being so careful with these kids, being so respectful and giving them whatever guidance he could. And we stayed in touch. And long story, there's a lot of details and all of that right there, but we stayed in touch. And I was really struck by his efforts to help these other kids. So at the end of my time there, I asked him, I said, what do you want to do with your life? You know, he was a 20-year-old, half his life had been spent on the street. And he said he wanted to help other kids. So at that point, I felt he seemed worthwhile to me, that I should stick with him and do what I could to help him help them. So we stayed in touch over the next couple of years. And I went back 2 years later. I first went in 2006. I went back 2 years later. And at that point, decided that I definitely wanted to do what I could to help him help these other kids. And we came up with the name Jajjas Kids. Ronnie had started calling me Jajja at the end of my first visit. And we were texting back and forth. I was in a safari lodge by myself, and I got this message, "Dear Jajja," and I was like, "What is that?" You know, so I asked one of the waitresses, and she said, "You know, is that from somebody in this country?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, it means grandparent." And so I had been labeled grandmother by Ronnie, because he had said to me before we parted, he had said that, you know, he never had a mom or a dad. He never had anybody to give him any guidance, but he would really appreciate having somebody he could get counseling from. And I said, "Well, I'm old enough to be your grandma." So there was Jajja. So we stayed in touch. I went back and we started to develop programs that I funded programs that he was doing in the slums with kids on the streets. And it was a whole variety of different things that happened. But it was primarily trying to give the kids a sense of hope, a little instruction, we had a Friday program, we called it. Kids would get a shower, they would get a meal, they would get a lesson in English and math. And it just went on from there. So, Sherry, you look like you had a question.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask you to describe some of the initial programming.
Okay. We had, there was a church, and now you'll see a picture of it in a few minutes. I'll show you some slides, but there was a church that we used to meet at in the slums, and the kids would gather around. We funded Ronnie to get a blackboard. And so he would be teaching, and he had other volunteers helping with him. And they would be teaching kids a little bit of math, a little bit of English. They would, they would counsel the kids. They would have, we funded Christmas parties where the kids would come together for an afternoon, and there'd be music and there'd be a meal. A meal was always what you got the kids there for. You know, that was really what, oh boy, we're going to get some porridge, or we're going to get some rice or whatever. So that's how it started. And what happened was, actually, after my second trip there, I came back and I put together a significant photography exhibit of the pictures from Uganda and elsewhere. And I raised money and sent it back, not to Ronnie, but to a program he was involved with. And it was $1,200, which seemed like a lot of money at the time to me, first fundraising I had done. And it was used to put 25 kids in school for a term, which was wonderful. At the end of the term, there was no more money for them to go to school the next term. And, that was a big lesson to me. Like, where's the continuity in this? And I started feeling that way with the Friday program and the other things we did in the slums. It was great to try to teach kids a little bit of math, but at the end of the day, they weren't going to learn anymore. They weren't going to get an education. They weren't going to get any fulfillment of a way to get out of their poverty. The slums are abject poverty, and people that are just there generation after generation. There's just no way out unless they're very fortunate. So I was learning all these lessons in the few years that we were doing the program. And at the same time, I was trying really hard not to start a nonprofit. I had done that once before. I didn't start one before, but for 2 years, I had worked at a small nonprofit grassroots organization. And I knew better. I knew that if I went down that path again, it was all consuming. So I leaned on my friends and my family for money in the beginning, and it was all good. And then I kept getting advice that you really have to start a nonprofit if you're going to be legitimate and get money. So 2012, all of that changed. We bit the bullet. Ronnie and I decided that it was time to try to do something more. And he called me up at one point and he said that he had 9 little kids that were staying in a church. And I had been to this place and it was hard to believe that they were staying there. And they were sleeping on flattened cardboard boxes in mud because it rained a lot and there were lots of holes in the roof. So at that point, I just decided we had to do more. And from there, we took these 9 kids in, rented a home, and went on from there. So,
I think it's amazing that you realized so quickly, because one of the biggest complaints of organizations that receive, or people that receive donations from developed countries, is we swoop in, give them a little money, they go to school for a semester, and then what happens?
Yeah.
And it's the sustainability, and how do we keep it going, and how do we not just walk away once the grant ends or once the donations run out? And I think we as Americans have no concept of really what a street child is. I was in my MSW program and I went to one of my colleagues, a fellow student, was from South Africa, and she was doing development work in HIV/AIDS. And when she talked about the kids, there was like this disconnect. And she said, "Oh, Sharon, you don't understand. They swoop out like bats at night. Like, it's just so overwhelming. And there's nothing for us to do. And like, they're just out there and they're hungry and they have no clothes and they have no food and they have no family and they have no education."
right.
And, so it's amazing that, you started this and that you've had so much success. Do you have any idea on the numbers of street kids in Uganda?
The number that's been thrown around for years is 10,000 in Kampala.
Just in Kampala, 10,000 kids. It's amazing. Oh, you muted. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Sorry.
Something just froze. I don't know what happened.
Technology.
Yeah, right. So far, so good. I learned so much by knowing Ronnie and getting to know him more all the time. I mean, the relationship that we started with was, some admiration, but I was 60, he was 20. We're from totally different cultures, totally different life experiences. And so we really had to learn to trust each other. And it was an ongoing choice, really. It's like there were other opportunities. I had to work with other guys like him doing other stuff. And I fortunately kept sticking with Ronnie. The stories from him were just amazing. His father died when he was a baby. His father was a businessman who was murdered. His grandmother raised him until she died when he was 4. And at that point, his mother came back from wherever she had been in the city, back to the village. And for the next 2 years, Ronnie was with his mother, and he believes she probably had HIV/AIDS at the time. So she died when he was 6, and her dying words to him were to go find your father's village. And so how does a 6-year-old that has no idea where anything is
find his father's village?
Yeah. So he went walking, and he's got lots of stories about that experience, but he ended up in Kampala and quickly was involved with other kids on the street. And for 10 years, the police would round them up and put them in jail if there was a dignitary coming. Bill Clinton came at one point. Prince Charles came, and they would swoop the kids off the street and throw them in jail for a couple of weeks so that the streets look clean of the vermin that the kids were. As you can imagine, they were totally looked down upon by society. They were mistrusted at every corner. They would hide in tunnels at night, and if there was flash flooding, twice I paid Ronnie the money to transport a couple of kids who had died in flash floods in tunnels. Because the rains would come and be very heavy rains, and there they were. So their conditions are horrendous. And as you were saying, we just have no idea. And the more I learned about these situations, the more compelled I was to see what we could do to try to make a difference. And always, it was my interest in Ronnie and supporting him, because there was no way I could come up with the answers.
Right.
There was no assumption on my part, and to this day there still isn't. And our board is in the same place. We don't know what the best thing is for them. There's books been written about organizations that mean so well and swoop in, and they do more harm than good.
And my friend told me, like, there's such a disconnect with where they are and how ready they are to meet whatever need it is, that we as the donors will say, like, oh, can you do this? And can you do this? And can you do this? And they just say, yes, 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 because they so desperately need the resources to do the work. Meanwhile, they're so far behind that and not even ready, but, they're trying to get there. So, there really needs to be more balance. And you're so far ahead of so many of the donor organizations by understanding the answers have to come from within, and that they know best how to meet their needs. They just don't have the resources to get there.
Right. And that's, I can't say that we had this all figured out in the beginning. And what we've realized over the years, and Ronnie says it as well as I do now, it's all been organic. Each time a problem has arisen, we just look at the situation, put our heads together, whoever's involved in it, the board, I have a board here, he's got a group of advisors there, and we just figure it out. We figure out what needs to happen. There was no crystal ball. There was no master plan, and it's interesting to me at this point, after 10 years of having a house for children and having our organizations work in collaboration for all these years, we're still figuring out ways to communicate and ways to be and the best way of doing things. It's an ongoing process. It doesn't.
But I think because yours is built on mutual respect,
that's right,
that you make it work. You see the problem, you work the problem, and you trust that everyone has, is putting forth their best effort and best intentions, and that's what you do.
Yeah.
All right, so tell us more. So, all right, so now you're funding this program. You realize the kids can't live in a church, with holes in the roofs on cardboard. So you decide to rent somewhere.
We decided to rent a house. So we had 9 kids, and I'm thinking maybe we should just show the slides now.
Yeah.
If Stephanie can do that, that would be great. I think it'd be just as easy to talk through them. Okay, so this is the church that I was referring to, that I was familiar with. I had gone here many times. It's in Katwe slum. There's been a movie made about Katwe. So this was an official church, and when Ronnie called me the end of 2012, and he said that he had 9 kids sleeping in here at night, and he was paying a guard. The church had a guard, paying the guard an extra few shillings to keep watch on the kids at night. And at that point, I decided this is when we had to do something different. And the next slide will show an alternative. If Steph could move that. This was another program that I had seen. And these kids were 25 kids sleeping in a garage. And the house was being occupied by older teenagers that were in a program. These kids were just getting shelter. They weren't getting food. They weren't getting education. And again, it didn't seem adequate to me. So next slide would show that Ronnie quickly found this house to rent. And it was in good shape in the beginning. And it was just big enough for the 9 kids. We had room for a staff person to stay. There were actually 2 staff people that stayed with them. And then we started, next slide will show, this is Ronnie and the first 9 kids. They were between the ages of 4 and 9. There were a cluster of 6 and 7-year-olds. And all of these kids are still in the program today, except for one who went back with his parents. He got reconnected with his parents, but the other 8 kids are all in the program today. Here they are celebrating their good fortune about having a home together. And from the beginning, it has felt like a home for these kids. It's a family. Now, this is the first group of kids to go to school. This was the very beginning. The first year they weren't all old enough to go to school really, and we didn't quite have the money for it. And again, we just started scraping money together. It just kept happening.
No,
the-
Diane,
Mhm.
maybe some of our participants don't know, but because here in America, primary school and right up through K-12 is free.
Right. Right.
And that's not the
right.
case in Uganda.
It's not the case at all. There are government schools which are so awful that they're not worth going to. But even government schools, they have to pay for uniforms and books and pencils and everything. There's nothing given at all. And we didn't want to, if our kids were going to get educated, they had to be quality education. So we right away started putting them in good schools. And this group of kids here, this was after the first or second year, I guess, we had 14 kids at that point. In school, when they're in nursery, the little guys with the plaid pants, they're at nursery school and kindergarten. And the early costs weren't that much. It was affordable. And the whole program was affordable. What we were running this program on in the beginning was less than $20,000 the first few years, to feed the kids, house them, have them in school, clothe them, get
Rent the building, everything.
That was everything.
Wow.
And then as the kids were going on in their grade levels, especially when they got to secondary school, the costs kept going up as well. So here they are, we still had everybody in primary school. So at that point, it was under $30,000 at this point that we could run the program. When they started going, primary is from grades 1 to 7. And then they go on to secondary school. It's the British school system. So there's like 2 levels of higher education or secondary education. So the next couple of years after this, you'll see a picture of the kids now.
Wow.
Yeah, they're young men and women, and even the youngest ones are still pretty up there in age. So at this point, we have 17 kids that have graduated from primary 7 and are on to secondary school and now beyond, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the primary school graduation is about 25% of the Ugandan population. So for us to have 17 of our 20 kids beyond that is,
Amazing.
pretty happy about that. Yeah, it's been amazing. And I'm just shocked. I haven't been there in 4 years because of COVID. And I'm planning to go this spring. And to see these kids now, I can almost not recognize some of them because they've gotten so much bigger. But the educational system has increased as long as, as the cost has increased so much that now the cost is extreme for us. We're still managing it, but it's another story. So this is one of the kids that was 4 when he started. This is Kayundo. And he's just this charming little guy. Here he is today. He's 14 now. And he's sitting on the brand new mattress that he just got. We needed to get mattresses for everybody in the house. So there he is. The next picture is Ashim. And he was 6 when he started the program. He still has that beautiful smile today. And here he is at the age of 16. He's going to boarding school. So he's one of the secondary school kids.
Wow.
Our kids are placed in schools based on their interest and their ability, and not just because it's the right thing for them to go to that school that's convenient. So we've had kids last year, they were in 6 different schools.
Wow.
Which gets to be crazy when it's time to have them go on. So I think the next picture shows one more of our kids that then and now. This is Mark. And Mark was 9 when he came to the program, and here he is today. So Mark is one of our high school graduates. We have 2 that have just graduated from high school. The school year has ended as of December, and they're on school break now. Mark is destined to be an engineer, extremely bright, extremely hardworking. So many stories about him. He used to study with his feet in a bucket of ice water at night, cold water. They don't have ice, but cold water, so he could stay awake to study as well as he possibly could. It's just amazing. So I think
Now, will you guys help them get to the university?
Oh yeah. So
okay.
thank you for asking that. Yes, our commitment, it's been an interesting journey that our commitment from the beginning has been to take care of these kids. And the logical question is, well, when do they age out and how do you bring in more kids? And Ronnie and I both used to have this big dream of, a big program and have a dormitory for boys and a dormitory for girls and have all kinds of educational things going on and our own school and everything. And the reality was we wanted to do the best we could for these 20 kids rather than dilute the resources, for one thing, dilute the attention that they could get and the connections that we could have with them. So it's been a continual decision over the years to stick with the 20 kids. And I used to feel uncomfortable about that. I used to think like, wow, I really, 20 kids, it's a drop in the bucket. I mean, I used to feel that it's like a drop in the bucket. But I now realize how important that drop is and how much of an impact helping 20 kids can be for their families, for the community. So yeah, thank you for asking that. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a big journey in that regard. So
we do have one question from the audience, and they'd like you to talk some about, other than the financial resources, what are some of the challenges that you face as an NGO in Uganda?
Okay, really good question. So one of the biggest challenges is the lack of resources that are there in Uganda. The quality, actually, this building shows it very well. This is a house we bought. It was an unfinished house. The quality of construction was really poor. The quality of the materials that people get there are poor quality. So, every 3 years we have to buy mattresses for everybody. Just things don't last. So there's an expense involved with just trying to do things as well as we can. The government has been a major issue for us. There's no government support in any way. When there are certain meetings that are mandated, people have to come and inspect the house and the program. And they're government staff, and we have to pay for their transportation, pay for lunch for them. We have to be able to provide them with resources out of our own pockets. There's a lot of corruption all over the government. There's been all kinds of efforts to try to minimize that, but it's not easy. I'm trying not to say much about the government, but it's hard not to. The last election, the president, who's been in office for 37 years, he threw his opponents in jail, beat them up. There's that kind of disregard all the time. The police harass. When visitors come from out of other countries, we get harassed because they know we have money. So they would stop us and they would talk to us and try to, get money from us. So there's those kind of conditions, plus the poverty that's everywhere. So when we show up, it's just expected that we're going to do certain things, help people out, and it's beyond our resources. So I hope I answered that well enough. I mean, there's just so many challenges. COVID became a huge challenge for us, of course, as it did everywhere in the world. But what happened there, the government shut down the districts. So basically counties, people couldn't go from one county to another. And therefore people started to not have a way to get food. And that became an issue immediately. And so there was a shortage of food. There was a shortage of income too. People couldn't get to their jobs. And so we immediately were able to get some money together from our donors. We put out a plea, which has only happened that one time, asking for a specific donation to help us to fund for food and to and the sanitation supplies and medicine that they needed.
And from that same participant or guest, Ann West, she'd like to know, other than making a financial donation, how can we get more involved in your nonprofit? How can they help?
We are always looking here for people to join the board. In fact, we're doing some things right now that will make it easier and better for us to have new board members. We've had a very small, close-knit, extremely dedicated group of people. And it's been a lot of my friends, not all my friends, but a lot of them have been part of this over the years. And we're really at a level now, and I'm confident about it, that we can step up and broaden our horizon, broaden our resource base, and any kind of support we can get from new board members, from different aspects of ways we want to develop the program. For example, with our kids now growing up, graduating from high school, going on to university or trade school, a lot of the kids are going to end up going to trade programs. We're forming a committee now. For the first time, we're going to have an education committee, and we are going to help give whatever guidance we can to the choices that are going to be made for the kids to go on. It's a critical point in their lives, you know, more so, I think, than we ever experience here. You know, these kids are 16, 17, 18, 19, and they're making life decisions right now. You know, Mark, who you saw a minute ago, he wants to be an engineer, a civil engineer, and he's already looking into materials that aren't being used in Uganda that might be useful there. So he's already starting to experience that. So the more that we can have people here giving some input to that, I'm always looking for people to help, you know, share information about the program, which to me is as important as getting funds. I think it's really wonderful if we can just let people know that this kind of a program can exist. It's not rocket science. It's having some great good fortune, having a magician like Ronnie, you know, that you can trust, and he can be the backbone of it. But it's not impossible. So if anybody's interested in being more involved, please get in touch with me, because I would love that.
And we did put the website in the chat.
Yeah.
So folks can definitely go there and get more information on how to get in contact and find out more.
Yeah.
But can you talk a little bit just about, like, I know we think, oh, people want donations, it's got to be $25, $50, $100. Can you talk about how far donations go in Uganda? Like, just example, to feed the kids.
To feed the kids, they're growing some of their own food now, which is really pretty amazing. The whole program this year, with the education costs that we've had, which are probably, you know, as high as they're going to be, the whole program is $75,000.
Can you tell us, what does that include?
So that includes 20 children being cared for, educated. It includes all the food, their clothing, all their medical care. We've had some surgeries this year, significant medical costs. It includes paying for the staff of 6 that was there. Now there's going to be 5. We're switching things around there. It includes all of their technology needs, their internet. It includes the electricity, the utilities for the building. And I still have to show you about the new house.
Keep going.
Yeah. No, it includes everything. No, it's good.
I mean, so $75,000.
That's what it's been. Yeah.
And for every single thing for how many? 19 children?
20, actually.
20 children,
yep,
including the staff costs to take care of them. I mean, that's just amazing.
Yeah. That's what it's been. So yeah, so I wanted to go on and show you about the house. And please, any questions, just pop in them. I appreciate that. So as the kids were getting bigger and we went from the original 9 to 20, the house was becoming too small, and the landlord, that little house, the landlord wasn't taking care of it. The kids were really feeling that they could be put out on the street again. They were very insecure about the whole situation. And so we decided we were going to build a new house. And at the end of 2017, we were having a fundraiser, an in-person fundraiser. And I just kind of on the stage, I just said, oh, by the way, we're going to start raising money. One of our board members had suggested it was time to think about a permanent home. So within a year and a half, we raised $110,000. And we were able to buy this building, which Ronnie had found. It was in the same neighborhood where the house was that the kids had. And we just decided that it was going to be the perfect place, even though there was no roof on the right side. And the left side we thought was in good shape. There were no windows, no doors, no electricity, no water. And we just thought it was perfect. So we bought it. And the next few slides will just show you some of the evolution of it. So once the renovation got underway, the side that I thought was in good shape turned out to be in bad shape. So the whole left side was rebuilt. the right side got a roof put on it, and the kids were the ones that were interested in helping along with the construction crew. So on weekends, they couldn't wait for the weekend to come, and they started to be part of the building. And it made them to have more sense of an ownership too. So here's the house under construction. At one point, we ran out of money, and somebody donated $10,000 so we could buy those windows that are sitting there. And we just kept going and getting the money we needed, and that's the house today.
That is beautiful.
And Ronnie was just as brilliant about it as he is about so many things. I mean, he's just naturally very intelligent, very smart in all the logical ways of being smart. And he made this happen in, a total of $110,000, including the purchase of the original house. That there's plenty of room for the kids. There's 2 people that live at the house, the security guard and the house mother. They live with the kids, and they're both fairly young themselves. They're in their 20s. And the rest of the house is for the kids. There's office space there. There's a library, and the kids have bunk beds. The girls are upstairs. We have 2 girls, and the rest are boys. And the girls are upstairs separate. There's separate entrances for everybody. So it works really well.
Can you talk about your staffing when you say you have 5 staff?
Mm-hmm.
What do they do?
So Ronnie is the director, and we are just in the process of getting new staff. There's a social worker. It's required by the government, but it's also somebody that we want to have as a social worker to help the kids, encourage them, mentor them, and also
and deal with their trauma. I mean, we can't even imagine what they've been through.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. We can't imagine it. And even the stories I've heard, it's still hard to believe. The social worker is also somebody who's coordinating their educational programs when there's a problem at school, or when it's time when families here have a school night and the parent or parents have to go to visit the school, there's conflict sometimes if there's 2 or 3 kids in the same school. Where do you go first? We've got 20 kids, and when it's time for parent day or whatever, they've got to split up and cover as many kids, teachers as they can. So the social worker is very integral for that. Beyond the counseling, just all kinds of aspects of it. And I've seen pictures of when it's time to get ready for school, and it's just big production, because when the kids go, especially boarding school, but even any of the schools, when the kids are ready to go for the next semester, they have to bring their own supplies. They have to bring brooms and toilet paper. That's the level of need that's presented to them in the schools. So it's a big deal. So there's the social worker. Then there's also the new position that's just getting filled as of today, is a program manager. It is basically an administrative assistant to Ronnie, who's the director. The program manager will be responsible for communicating with us. There's a lot of accountability. So the 2 organizations that we have working together, we've got a nonprofit here, Jajjas Kids Inc. is our nonprofit here, 501c3. And what Ronnie has there is an NGO, non-governmental organization, which actually is sanctioned by the Ugandan government. So he's under their authority. And every 5 years, there's a renewal that happens for their registration. And that's also happening right now. And so they're sanctioned there. So our relationship is that we have a grant agreement, and we here in the US are the grantors. And unfortunately, right now, we're the only source of income. And they are the grantees. So that's how we've worked this out, that we are giving them the funds that they need. So back to the program manager, that's a key role for us, because that individual has to be accountable to us for the money that we provide. And we come up with the budget together, and we work it out, and then allocate the money as we go along. And there's always emergencies. Every month, there's always an emergency. We're trying to simplify that by anticipating and providing budgeting in a different way. So there's another place somebody with expertise in budgeting might be able to help us out with figuring that out, because it's all shifting now, especially with the kids going on to higher education, to university and trade programs. We don't really know yet what the costs are going to be. We do know that it's not going to be anything like cost of education here in this country. It's more
Steve?
like.
Oh,
Hmm?
I was just gonna say on the education theme, we have a question from Douglas Taylor, wondering if any of the students are going to attend college in the United States, and are there universities nearby where they are in Uganda?
Yes, there are universities. One of the biggest ones in all of East Africa is Makerere University, and it's right there where they are. But there are several others too. And again, Mark, the one who wants to be a civil engineer, we've already checked it out with RPI because it just seemed logical. We had a connection there, and it turns out that because these kids would have to get full scholarship, there's no way we could do it otherwise. He would have to have a bachelor's degree already, and they would consider a master's program for him. But until that point, and I can understand that. I mean, he's an unknown quantity. You know, our kids are just, and even the schools they've come from, like, I don't know how an American school would evaluate their credentials, their transcripts and stuff. So
Yeah, but we take international students all the time, and that could be a really cool thing for UAlbany alumni to get behind.
that would be
You know,
terrific.
working to scholarship, maybe one of the students here, just something to think about. Douglas has another question.
Mhm.
He said that we mentioned trauma, and even in the US, growing up without at least one parent present can cause problems. And he wants to know, do the kids have ongoing therapy, and is it hard to get services for them? And also, have you had any problem with delinquent behavior or maladaptive, coping because of their trauma?
Last question first. We have had no problems with their delinquent behavior. It's been quite remarkable that the kids are so bonded as well as they are. Recently, one of the girls, Daphne, said she was going out for 5 minutes and she was out for 5 hours, and she got in trouble, and she was reprimanded, and she's 20 years old, and I can understand that she'd kind of want to go out and
Right.
see her friends for a while. And that's about as misbehaving as the kids have been. I mean, they just really have consistently.
That's amazing.
Well, they're so grateful for what they have.
Right.
They don't forget where they're from, and they're still in touch with their family. So many pieces to all of this. There's throughout at least East Africa, if a child is missing one parent, they're considered to be an orphan. It's kind of across the board thing. So all of our kids in one way or another are an orphan, having missed one parent, but they might still have a mom or a dad. I've recently been hearing stories about some of the kids, one in particular, whose father had rejected him very, very harshly. And it was because the father couldn't afford to take care of him. So he said horrible, mean things to the kid. And here is Dawda is now 17, and he's still feeling the trauma of that, which happened many years ago. And the thing that works in our favor, because there are no government services that counsel these kids. It's just, that's the biggest problem, I think, is the lack of government services. They can't even pave the roads. We have to fix our own road out front of the house. But the saving grace in their trauma and rehabilitation is Ronnie. And he has such marvelous ways of counseling the kids, and he's been doing it for 10 years with them. So it's just kind of second nature. They're encouraged to trust themselves. They're encouraged to believe in themselves. They're encouraged to have dreams and to plan how they can achieve those dreams. So years ago when Ronnie came, when we went to the dollar store.
Ronnie came here to the United States.
Yeah, he came.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, he's been here. Actually, he's been here 6 times now.
Wow.
So he first came in 2012. Do we only have an hour? I think I could talk for about 6 hours. He came in 2012 the first time and did a program with Heifer International for 3 months. And it was just a great experience for him. And out of his visit here, this one time that he came and we went to the dollar store, he bought little journals for each of the kids that he took back. And the journal, it was a little book, and it had like a sort of a mirror on the front of it. And he wanted each kid to have that book so that they could write their hopes for the future, what they wanted to be. And the mirror was part of it. Like, look at yourself and see what it is that you can do, see what it is you want to do with your life. And if you have a path you want to follow, find people already doing that work or already in that path that you can get advice from, that you could learn from. And so he's been counseling them all along in all of these life lessons. Another one is to not blame your parents. He said, your parents, he just told me this when he was here recently. Your parents gave you life. They did their job. Now it's up to you. What you make of your life is up to you. So to tell that to a kid who feels abandoned, rejected, half starved to death, that it's up to them now, it's an empowerment that he's giving them. Another one of his lessons is the difference between right and good. Good being, he describes it very eloquently, but good being a more temporary situation where, maybe somebody gave you some extra money and you go out and have a good time one night. Whereas the right thing to do might be to put that money aside or save it till you really need it for an emergency or something. So those kind of lessons are just instilled into their existence with Ronnie.
So he's like, definitely sounds like a father figure to them, even though he himself is young.
Well, he's 36 now. We've known each other for 16 years.
Wow. Okay.
He describes himself as the father, the mother, the grandparent, the boss, the cook.
But everything.
Yeah.
So we do have another question. This is from Maribel Ramos. She'd like to know if there are any transportation costs or challenges that you face when you're trying to send the kids to the different schools and all over.
Interesting question. As the kids were graduating from primary school was, a short walk away from the house, both houses, the old one and the new one. Secondary school, they had to travel further somewhere in the city, and they could take a bus, they could walk, which would take like an hour to some of the schools, or they could ride a bike. So it became a tradition as each kid graduated from primary school that they would get a bike, secondhand fixed up bike, but they would get a bike and that would be their transportation. And at one point, somebody didn't take good care of his bike and let it become disabled. And he wasn't given the resources right away to fix it. So his lesson was to, he learned his lesson by walking to school for a couple of weeks rather than getting his bike fixed right away. So yeah, so that's, and I think the same will be for kids in university. I mean, we're hoping that they'll still stay at the house, although some kids stay at hostels when they have university and other programs happening. So we just have to find out. This year is the new discovery of what's next.
So what's the vision 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Like, will these kids still be coming home to this house? Will this be their base? Will there be new kids? What do you guys see?
Well, what we're seeing at this point is that sticking with these 20 kids now is how the people here are envisioning the program. That we don't own anything there. The house is owned by the NGO. The program is at this point being run in a lot of ways by the kids. We just had new staff interviewed, and the two oldest kids were the ones that interviewed the people. The first level of interview. One of the girls, Sonia, who's just graduated from high school, she's doing some secretarial work. She wants to be part of the program. So the kids are already talking about giving back themselves. So as they age out, as they go on and have hopefully, meaningful work in their futures, good educations behind them, the vision is that, and this is where the ripple effect comes in, the vision is that they will be able to take care of themselves, help their families, their mothers who, sell hard candies on the street to earn money for the kids. And they'll be able to contribute to their society. So my view at this point is that we will have done our jobs. The house is theirs. A lot of what we've tried to instill now, which is this picture right in front of us, is about sustainability. And we've done a lot, especially because of COVID, inspiring it. We've done a lot to try to develop income producing programs for them to have. So we bought 3 acres of land a couple of years ago at the height of the pandemic, so the kids could get out of the city, get some exercise, and here they are growing sweet potatoes, and they were the sweet potatoes. So the idea was that they would be able to sell them and to generate some income. And then we bought a truck so they could transport the goods and themselves. And the truck has also been used to rent out, for transportation for other things. The kids have learned to make sandals. They did this during the pandemic as well, out of old tires. So they made the sandals for themselves and also to sell. So, we've been trying different ways for them to earn an income. And I used to say, the goal is for them to be self-sustaining, that the program would be for Ugandans and owned by Ugandans, run by Ugandans. And I used to say it, but it was like, God, that doesn't seem logical that could even happen. But in the last couple of years, I've seen the possibility more and more that we can give them enough diverse skills and money-making opportunities that they might be able to generate some more income. Here, the kids were out of school for 2 solid years. Uganda was the worldwide champion of having the longest school shutdown. And so they were studying from home with very poor, they were getting their lessons over phones and through radio systems. It was just ridiculous. So we raised the money to give them 10 new tablets and a couple of extra computers. So here the kids are, using the tablets to study with. Another income project was 2 of the boys put in an official proposal to start a poultry project. And so here's their chickens that they were raising. And,
Nice.
So they're interested themselves. They want to make money as well. So the vision is, constantly being reaffirmed that our commitment is to these children and to giving them the best future that we can. And hoping that they find ways to do it in a different way or in the same way themselves. So this is getting ready to go back to school this last year when school finally opened again. Kids their mattresses are loaded up on top of the vans so that they're going to boarding school. And
So they actually have to bring their own mattresses to boarding school.
oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Your own plates, your own cups, your own everything. So, and here they are, very happy in their school uniforms, very happy to be going off to school again. It was the shutdown was really hard for them. It was very difficult. And had we not had that house, which just got finished, they moved in 5 months before COVID hit. Had we not had that house, I cannot imagine what those couple of years would have been.
I mean, I'm thinking about, what my small family went through in COVID, in just such close quarters, and my friends who maybe had a couple children. I only had one who was in college, so my life was easy. But to have 19 or 20 kids all home all the time, like, wow.
And 2 of them got COVID very seriously. I mean, they were very, very sick, and the house was big enough that they could be separated.
Which is amazing that it didn't roll through the whole house. I mean, kudos to the staff for making that happen. That's really impressive.
Yeah, it was very, very scary. Yeah, so having the house has just been a miracle, really. And this is in the yard here. This is Ryan, and that's a jackfruit that he's checking in to see if it's ripe yet. And this is Brian picking corn. This is all in the side yard, little strips of land, and they take advantage of it and grow what they can.
Oh, and here's just a nice comment I want to share from Douglas Taylor, who says, even though you mentioned there were only 20 students, there is what's called the butterfly effect, similar to exponential growth, or what Matthew Kelly calls holy moments. So I commend you for your good work.
Thank you. Thank you. That's wonderful to hear.
And I'm sure we all agree with that. I mean, this is amazing.
Yeah, this is sugarcane. The kids grew sugarcane, and we might frown upon that here, but they just get such enjoyment out of it. So that was also in the side yard. And one of the things that's happened is that the kids, especially the boys, everybody's learning to cook. So there's an outdoor kitchen as well as the indoor kitchen at the house. And this is the outdoor kitchen. And on Sundays, the house mother gets the day off and the kids have to cook. So, here I mentioned before about the new mattresses. So that was an exciting day for them.
So what's the age range now?
So the youngest is 11 and the oldest is 20.
Okay.
21, maybe 21. Actually, our oldest, we have 19 kids in education still. The oldest one, Stephen, he has some mental issues. We don't know what they are, but he was unable to get through 3rd grade, and we tried. And so he has not been able to get any further in any kind of training or anything. So he's working now. He's got a situation that we funded, and he's working for somebody, and he's being overseen and stuff. So it's working out. The other 19 kids are all, in the educational mold here. So, and this is just a picture of the kids in the house enjoying television, staying connected with the world. This is Sonia that I mentioned earlier that wants to contribute to the program, wants to be helpful. This is what it looks like when you're feeding 20 kids at once.
Wow.
I've been able
to dinner out all at once.
I've been able to see how much they've changed and grown just by the pictures, because the plastic bowls that they used to get were these kind of shallow things, and they'd be overflowing with food. Now they get these big, deep bowls, like we would put 3 meals. It would be 3 meals for me, but they have that as one. So,
I mean, can you imagine cooking for 20 teenagers? Like, oh my gosh.
This is the last picture. This is, again, Sonia and Mark, the 2 that have just graduated from high school. And no question, they're going to university. They both work really hard. Sonia wants to be a lawyer, and not just a lawyer, she wants to be a military lawyer. And when asked why military, because she said her country really needs help, and she really wants to do that. And Mark is the one I mentioned earlier, wants to be a civil engineer and is already researching what other materials. And if we could get either of them to a school here in the country, the US, it'd be wonderful. Or any of the other kids to come.
All right, well, we're heading towards 8 o'clock, so I'm wondering if we have any last questions from our guests about the amazing work Diane does and the whole team of Jajjas Kids. Now we're seeing in the chat, I don't know if you're seeing it, Diane, but we're seeing thanks, Diane. Excellent program. That's from Barbara. Thanks so much from Mary McCarty Arias. Like, I think people are just overwhelmed by, it's not only like, because we all hear these things. It's always like, what can you do? What can you do? What can you do? You see kind of the poverty porn on TV and it breaks your heart, but you just have no idea how to start, and to hear what you've done and what you've been able to do really with not a lot. Like, when you look at the amount of kids you've taken care of and how their lives have been transformed with such a small, it's a lot of money because you're asking people and stuff, but overall it's so small and it just goes so far. And you saved these kids' lives. Well,
and they're so grateful, they're so grateful to their donors. They're so, there's so much love, that's the thing. There's been trust to make this happen. And then there's so much love that comes out of it. And when Reiner was here recently and we met with small groups of donors, he said to them, he says straight out, you donors have invested in love. You have invested in the kids, and it's an investment in love. And the kids feel that. That's the thing. They're not straying. They want to do the best they can. They'll study hard, even if they've been goofing off, they'll study hard again, because they want to be worthy of the gifts that they've been given by having this chance. And our donors have been amazing. It's not a large group of people. It's not. We have a couple of nice sized donations, and people are very generous when they can be. But it's a committed group of people that care, and so we've been writing it. I'm amazed. It's like seeing the kids now as big as they are. It's like, how did this happen?
Well, and I think when you can help them, even with the incredible trauma, when you can help them understand and express gratitude and have that love in the house, it's so healing. It doesn't take away the trauma, it doesn't make it all better, but it shows you that you can move through it, and still have a meaningful life. Right. Doris Brosi asks, she says, thanks so much for all you do. And she wants to know if this is recorded, and will it be available to share?
It's going to be on our website once it's up and running. And we also have a couple of videos on our website now too that that we've done in the past that give a lot of detail and you know, show the program evolution. I just want to mention one other thing about the kids that there's so many stories I could tell. One of the things that I think has been miraculous, not only is the house owned by the program there, but for years, since the beginning, the kids they have their own council among themselves. Every Saturday, the kids have a meeting, and then there's a council of ministers. There's a minister for sanitation, education, entertainment, timekeeper, and there's a president and a vice president, and they're a judiciary. They set the rules, they decide what needs to be done and what needs to get elevated to the higher, you know, the staff, the people that are really caring for them. And it's been such a good leadership experience for these kids. You know, it's one of the many tools that they've gotten, you know, outside of the formal education that I think will take them as far as anything they learn in the classroom.
Well, and a real sense of community, like,
yeah,
they have a family.
Yeah, they're brothers and sisters. They really are. So,
no, that is amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming back to UAlbany and sharing this with us. And my mind's already going in so many ways of how we as a university community can support the work you're doing. I mean, from getting some of our students maybe to have some virtual mentorships, getting our student groups, especially those with affinity for Africa, to support, you know, with donations and stuff, because they're always doing drives. And I'm sure with our amazing alumni, we'll have ideas too, but we will definitely be sharing this.
I welcome it because, you know, I've been so close to it that, you know, when the question came on early, you know, how else can we help? And it's like, let me think about that, you know, but I really welcome any thoughts and ideas that, you know, that's what keeps it going. It's, you know, that extra energy keeps us going. So.
Yeah, even, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but maybe figuring out a way to, I mean, there's just so many ways that I feel like we can support this amazing work you do. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your time again. And thanks to the Alumni Association for this opportunity. I'm thrilled to have it.
And we're going to go with our last word is going to be from an anonymous attendee who just put in the questions. You are an angel on earth.
Well, thank you. It's a good way to end. Thanks so much. It's just one person doing one thing. So thanks.
That's all it takes. And then you get the ripple.
That's exactly it. Thank you for that good ending. Thank you, Sherry. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.